Maya Rodriguez had always been the girl who fixed things. While other children played war games in the backyard, she was taking apart radios to see how they worked. Her small hands could thread wires through impossible spaces, her patient mind could decode the most complex technical manuals, and her gentle voice could calm even the most frustrated soldier when their equipment failed. At 24, she had spent 3 years as a communications specialist with the 82nd Airborne Division. Her job was simple on paper: maintain radio equipment, establish communication links, and stay safely behind the front lines while the real soldiers did the fighting. She wore the same uniform, carried the same gear, but everyone knew she wasn't really a fighter. She was support staff. Essential, yes, but not a combatant. The morning sun cast long shadows across forward operating base Nightingale as Maya adjusted the satellite dish for the 100th time that week. The base sat in a valley between two rocky hills in Afghanistan, a collection of concrete barriers, metal containers, and canvas tents that had become home to 300 American soldiers. Maya's world was a cramped communications trailer filled with blinking lights, humming processors, and the constant chatter of radio traffic. "Rodriguez, you got that link to Bagram working yet?" Sergeant First Class Johnson poked his head through the trailer door, sweat already beading on his forehead despite the early hour. The heat in this part of Afghanistan was merciless, turning metal equipment into ovens and making every task twice as difficult. "Almost there, Sergeant," Maya replied, her fingers dancing across a keyboard as she fine-tuned the connection. "The sandstorm last night knocked us off by 3 degrees. Give me 2 more minutes." Johnson nodded and disappeared. Maya had earned his respect over the past 18 months at Nightingale. She never complained, never asked for special treatment, and somehow always managed to keep their communications running even when everything else fell apart. The men called her Magic Maya because of her ability to make broken radios work with nothing but spare parts and determination. Maya's path to the Army had been unconventional. Growing up in San Antonio, Texas, she had been the daughter of a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Her mother, Carmen, cleaned office buildings at night, served lunch at a school cafeteria during the day, and did laundry for neighbors on weekends. There was never money for college, never money for anything beyond the basics. When Maya graduated from high school, the military recruiter had painted a picture of technical training, steady pay, and eventual college benefits. Her mother had cried when Maya signed the papers, not from pride but from fear. Carmen Rodriguez had lost her own brother in Vietnam and knew that military service, even in a support role, carried risks. "Mija, promise me you'll stay safe," her mother had whispered at the bus station as Maya left for basic training. "Promise me you won't try to be a hero." Maya had promised, and she had kept that promise for 3 years. She stayed in her lane, did her job, and let the infantry soldiers handle the dangerous work. She wasn't trained for combat, wasn't built for it, and had no desire to prove otherwise. Her weapon qualification scores were adequate but unremarkable. Her physical fitness tests met the minimum standards. She was exactly what the Army expected from a communications specialist: competent, reliable, and non-threatening. The other soldiers treated her with a mixture of protectiveness and mild condescension. They appreciated her work but saw her as someone who needed to be shielded from the harsh realities of war. When convoys went out on patrol, Maya stayed behind. When intelligence suggested enemy activity in the area, Maya was moved to the most secure part of the base. She was valuable, but in the way that expensive equipment is valuable, something to be protected and preserved. Lieutenant Colonel Bradley, the base commander, had made this philosophy clear during Maya's first week at Nightingale. "Rodriguez, your job is to keep us connected to the outside world," he had said during her initial briefing. "You're not here to fight. You're here to make sure that when we need backup, reinforcements, or medical evacuation, we can call for them. That makes you one of the most important people on this base, but it also means you stay out of harm's way." Maya had nodded and accepted this role without question. She understood the logic. A dead communications specialist was useless to everyone. Her skills were too valuable to risk in firefights or patrol operations. She was a force multiplier, making everyone else more effective, but only if she remained alive and functional. Her typical day began at 0500 with equipment checks. She would methodically test every radio, every satellite link, every backup system. The morning reports from patrol bases scattered across the province depended on her work. If communications went down during a firefight, soldiers died. The weight of this responsibility had shaped her into someone who triple-checked everything and never left anything to chance. After the equipment checks came the tedious but crucial work of maintaining connections throughout the day. Maya monitored radio frequencies, adjusted signal strength, coordinated with other bases, and troubleshot problems as they arose. She spoke daily with soldiers she had never met, voices crackling through static from remote outposts where small teams of Americans lived in constant danger. The work was isolating in many ways. While other soldiers formed tight bonds through shared combat experiences, Maya's closest relationships were with machines. She knew the personality of every radio, the quirks of every satellite dish, the warning signs that preceded equipment failures. Her hands could navigate control panels in complete darkness, her ears could distinguish between normal static and the interference patterns that meant trouble. During her off-duty hours, Maya usually stayed in the communications trailer, reading technical manuals or writing letters home. She sent an email to her mother every day, carefully edited to remove anything that might cause worry. In these messages, life at Forward Operating Base Nightingale sounded almost boring: equipment maintenance, training exercises, and the occasional celebration when someone received a care package from home. The reality was more complex. Even behind the wire, Maya lived with constant reminders that she was in a war zone. The base received mortar attacks every few weeks, sending everyone scrambling for bunkers while explosives fell randomly within the perimeter. Rocket-propelled grenades sometimes streaked over the walls at night, their red trails visible through her trailer windows. The sound of distant firefights was so common that Maya had learned to sleep through them. Maya's mother wrote back religiously, filling her daughter's inbox with news from San Antonio, updates on extended family, and careful questions about when Maya might be coming home. Carmen Rodriguez had aged visibly during her daughter's deployment, worry lines deepening around her eyes, her black hair showing more gray with each passing month. She attended novenas at the local Catholic church, lighting candles for her daughter's safety and praying to saints she barely understood. The other constant presence in Maya's life was her roommate, Private First Class Jennifer Walsh, a 19-year-old medic from Ohio who had arrived at Nightingale 2 months earlier. Jennifer was everything Maya was not: a blonde, outgoing, eager for adventure, and frustrated by the protective bubble that surrounded the non-combatant personnel. "I didn't join the army to hide in a bunker," Jennifer complained one evening as they sat in their small shared room, her medical bag opened on her cot while she reorganized supplies. "I trained to save lives in combat zones, but every time there's action, they stick me in the aid station." Maya understood the frustration. Jennifer was a skilled medic who could perform field surgery under fire, but base policy kept her away from patrol operations. Like Maya, she was considered too valuable to risk in direct combat roles. The irony was that both women had skills that could save lives in firefights, but regulations and doctrine kept them safely removed from situations where those skills might be needed most. "Maybe that's for the best," Maya replied, adjusting the antenna on her personal radio. Even off-duty, she monitored emergency frequencies, partly from professional habit and partly because the voices of distant soldiers had become her connection to the larger war happening beyond the base walls. "Easy for you to say," Jennifer shot back. "You chose communications." "I chose to be a medic because I wanted to help people when they needed it most." Hard to do that from inside a concrete bunker. The conversation reflected a tension that ran through the entire base. Forward Operating Base Nightingale was large enough to feel safe but small enough that everyone knew their role in the larger mission. The infantry soldiers who went out on patrol risked their lives daily but felt the satisfaction of directly engaging the enemy. The support personnel like Maya and Jennifer remained safe but often felt disconnected from the purpose that had brought them to Afghanistan. Maya had wrestled with these feelings during her first year at Nightingale. She had joined the army to serve her country, to be part of something larger than herself, but her daily reality involved fixing radios and monitoring frequencies. She was contributing to the mission, but her contribution felt abstract, removed from the life and death struggles happening just outside the wire. The breakthrough had come during a massive sandstorm that had knocked out communications across the entire province. For 3 days, Maya worked around the clock to restore connections while enemy forces used the communication blackout to coordinate attacks on isolated outposts. When she finally re-established contact with a remote firebase, the first voice she heard belonged to a sergeant who had been calling for medical evacuation for a wounded soldier. Thank God," the sergeant had repeated over and over. "We thought you guys had forgotten about us. We've got a man down, sucking chest wound, he's been waiting for 6 hours." The medical helicopter launched within minutes, guided by Maya's restored communication links. The wounded soldier survived, and Maya finally understood that her technical work had real consequences for real people. She might not be carrying a rifle, but her skills were literally keeping other soldiers alive. This understanding had sustained her through the routine and frustration of the past year. Every successful radio repair, every maintained satellite link, every clear conversation between base and patrol was a small victory against the chaos and confusion of war. Maya had found her place in the larger picture, even if that place was behind a control panel rather than behind a rifle. The morning when everything changed began like any other. Maya completed her equipment checks, established contact with all remote positions, and settled into the rhythm of monitoring and maintaining communications. The temperature was already climbing toward another scorching day, and the forecast called for possible dust storms in the afternoon. At 0800, she received a routine check-in from Team Alpha, a 12-man infantry patrol that had left the base before dawn to investigate reports of weapons smuggling in a village 15 kilometers to the northwest. The team leader, Staff Sergeant Michael Torres, sounded relaxed and confident as he reported their position and status. Nightingale Base, this is Alpha Team. Torres's voice came through clearly on the encrypted radio channel. We're approaching Checkpoint Echo. Village looks quiet, no signs of unusual activity. Local kids are selling fruit by the road, normal civilian traffic. Should reach the objective in about 30 minutes. Maya logged the transmission and confirmed their position on her digital map display. Checkpoint Echo was a crossroads where the main highway intersected with a dirt track leading to the target village. Intelligence reports had suggested that weapons were being moved through the area at night, hidden in truckloads of produce and construction materials. Copy, Alpha Team, Maya replied. Weather update, possible dust storm developing to the southwest, might affect visibility after 1400 hours. Next check-in at 0900. Roger that, Nightingale. Alpha out. Maya made notes in her log and turned her attention to other communications traffic. A supply convoy was requesting permission to depart for the provincial capital, a drone operator wanted to coordinate surveillance flights, and the base medical officer needed to discuss patient transfer procedures with a hospital in Germany. At 0900, Alpha Team failed to make their scheduled check-in. Maya waited 5 minutes, then tried to raise them on their primary frequency. Static filled her headphones. She switched to their backup frequency and tried again. More static. She checked her equipment, confirmed that all other communications were working normally, then attempted to contact Alpha Team on their emergency frequency. Nothing. Maya felt the first flutter of concern in her stomach. Radio problems were common in Afghanistan, where mountains, weather, and enemy jamming could disrupt communications without warning. Alpha Team's silence might mean nothing more than a malfunctioning radio or interference from atmospheric conditions. But they were trained to switch to backup frequencies if their primary equipment failed, and Maya had tried all their assigned channels. She logged the missed check-in and began troubleshooting procedures. First, she attempted to contact other patrols operating in the same general area to see if they could relay messages to Alpha Team. Then, she tried bouncing signals off different satellites to see if an alternate route might reach them. Finally, she requested that a surveillance drone flying over the region try to establish visual contact with the patrol. All efforts failed. Alpha Team had simply vanished from the electronic battlefield, 12 soldiers who had been talking to her 2 hours earlier now completely unreachable. Maya's training told her to follow protocol, log the communication failure, notify the operations center, and continue attempting contact at regular intervals. But something deeper, some instinct she couldn't name, told her this was different. The hair on the back of her neck was standing up, her heart rate had increased, and her hands felt cold despite the growing heat in the trailer. She picked up the field phone that connected her directly to the base operations center. Major Patricia Williams answered on the first ring, her voice crisp and professional. Operations, Major Williams. Major, this is Rodriguez in communications. Alpha Team missed their 0900 check-in, and I can't raise them on any frequency. I've tried all backup procedures with negative results. There was a pause while Major Williams consulted her own status boards. What was their last reported position? Checkpoint Echo, approaching the target village. Staff Sergeant Torres reported normal activity, no signs of problems. Copy. Continue attempting contact every 15 minutes and report any success immediately. I'm tasking a drone for visual reconnaissance of their route. Maya hung up the phone and returned to her radio controls, but the sick feeling in her stomach was growing stronger. She had been doing this job for 3 years, had lost contact with patrols before, had seen communications equipment fail in every possible way. This felt different. Over the next hour, she tried every technical trick she had learned, every procedure in the manual, every unofficial workaround that experienced communications specialists passed down to newcomers. She adjusted power levels, changed frequencies, even attempted to bounce signals off natural terrain features that might extend her range. At 10:30, the drone reached Alpha Team's planned route and began transmitting real-time video back to the base. Maya watched the feed on a small monitor in her trailer, seeing the landscape from a bird's-eye view as the unmanned aircraft traced the path the patrol should have taken. The drone found them at 10:45. Maya saw the vehicles first. 2 Humvees pulled off the road in a defensive position, their doors open, equipment scattered around them. Then, she saw the bodies. 12 soldiers lay motionless in the dust, their weapons beside them, their uniforms torn and bloodied. Alpha Team was dead. All of them. The patrol that had been talking to her 3 hours earlier, reporting normal conditions and civilian traffic, had been wiped out. Maya stared at the monitor in shock, her professional composure cracking as the reality hit her. These weren't statistics or casualty reports. These were men she had spoken with, voices she recognized, soldiers who had trusted her to maintain their lifeline to safety. And now they were gone. The operations center erupted into controlled chaos within minutes of the drone discovery. Maya heard boots running on concrete, voices shouting orders, and the distinctive whine of helicopter rotors spinning up in the distance. Through her trailer window, she watched soldiers grabbing gear and rushing toward the motor pool where armored vehicles were already being prepped for departure. Major Williams burst through Maya's trailer door without knocking, her face pale but determined. Behind her followed Lieutenant Colonel Bradley, the base commander, and Captain Sarah Mitchell, the intelligence officer. Maya had never seen all 3 of them in her communications trailer at the same time, and their presence confirmed what she already knew: this was not a routine incident. "Rodriguez, I need you to pull every communication from Alpha Team over the past 24 hours, Major Williams ordered, settling into the cramped space beside Maya's workstation. "Every transmission, every status report, every casual conversation. Something in their communications might tell us what happened." Maya's hands were already moving across her controls, accessing the digital recordings that captured all radio traffic on the base. Her fingers trembled slightly as she navigated through files, timestamps, and frequency logs. The voices of the dead men would soon fill the trailer, their final words preserved in electronic memory. "Here's their departure briefing from yesterday evening," Maya said, clicking on the first file. Staff Sergeant Torres's voice emerged from the speakers, calm and confident as he discussed route plans and mission objectives with the operations center. "Intelligence suggests the smuggling operation moves weapons through the village after midnight," Torres had reported. "We'll establish observation positions at dawn and maintain surveillance throughout the morning. If we spot suspicious activity, we'll coordinate with base for additional support." Lieutenant Colonel Bradley leaned closer to the speaker, his weathered face creased with concentration. He had commanded Forward Operating Base Nightingale for 8 months and had lost soldiers before, but never an entire patrol in a single incident. The political and military consequences would be severe, but his immediate concern was understanding what had gone wrong. Maya continued playing recordings chronologically. The patrol's nighttime position reports showed nothing unusual. Their early morning departures sounded routine. The final transmission at 0800 hours painted a picture of a normal Afghan village waking up to another day of commerce and daily life. "There," Captain Mitchell said suddenly, holding up her hand. "Play that last transmission again." Maya rewound the recording and played Torres's final check-in once more. The intelligence officer listened intently, her trained ears searching for details that might have seemed insignificant at the time but could now provide crucial information. "Local kids are selling fruit by the road, normal civilian traffic," Torres's voice repeated from the speakers. "Kids selling fruit," Mitchell mused. "At 8 in the morning, 15 kilometers from the nearest town. Does that strike anyone as unusual?" Major Williams frowned. "Not necessarily. Rural kids sometimes walk considerable distances to sell produce to passing vehicles. It's a common sight throughout Afghanistan." "But think about the timing," Mitchell pressed. "If there was a major attack planned for that location, wouldn't the locals have some advance warning? Wouldn't families keep their children away from a potential combat zone?" Maya felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand the intelligence officer's reasoning. In her 3 years of monitoring communications from Afghanistan, she had learned that local civilians often possessed an uncanny ability to sense impending violence. Children disappeared from streets hours before attacks. Markets closed early when trouble was brewing. The presence of kids selling fruit might have actually indicated that no one in the village expected violence. Which means the attack wasn't planned by local insurgents, Lieutenant Colonel Bradley concluded grimly. Someone else hit that patrol. Someone with enough operational security to keep their plans from the local population. The implications were sobering. Local insurgent groups typically relied on village support networks, advanced scouting, and intimate knowledge of terrain and timing. An attack that surprised both the American patrol and the Afghan civilians suggested a more sophisticated enemy, foreign fighters, special operations forces, or a cell with exceptional security discipline. Maya continued playing recordings as the 3 officers analyzed every detail. The patrol's communications revealed a group of professional soldiers following standard procedures, maintaining proper intervals between transmissions, reporting position changes according to protocol. Nothing in their voices suggested concern or awareness of impending danger. They were ambushed, Major Williams finally said, stating what everyone in the trailer already knew. 12 experienced soldiers with proper equipment and training, eliminated without getting off a single radio call for help. Maya's throat tightened. She had been Alpha Team's link to safety, their electronic lifeline to reinforcements and support. If Torres had managed even a few seconds of transmission time, she could have initiated emergency response procedures. Medical helicopters could have launched, quick reaction forces could have mobilized, artillery support could have been coordinated. Instead, the attack had been so swift and overwhelming that 12 soldiers died without anyone at Nightingale even knowing they were in trouble. Lieutenant Colonel Bradley straightened up, his command decision already made. I'm sending Bravo Team to secure the site and investigate. I want answers, and I want them before these bodies get cold. Sir, Captain Mitchell interjected, if this was a sophisticated ambush, whoever did it might still be in the area. Bravo Team could be walking into the same trap. That's a risk we have to take, Bradley replied. We can't leave American soldiers lying in the dirt while we debate tactical options. Bravo Team will have air support, artillery on standby, and full communication support. He turned to Maya. Rodriguez, you'll be their primary communications link. I want constant contact, minute-by-minute updates, and immediate notification if they encounter any problems. Maya nodded, though her stomach churned at the thought of sending another patrol into what had already proven to be lethal terrain. Bravo Team consisted of 14 soldiers led by Staff Sergeant Kevin Murphy, a tough Irish-American from Boston who had served 2 previous deployments in Iraq. Maya had worked with Murphy's team before and trusted their competence, but competence hadn't saved Alpha Team. Within 30 minutes, Bravo Team was rolling through the main gate in 4 armored vehicles, their route covered by drone surveillance and their communications monitored by every qualified operator on the base. Maya tracked their progress on her digital map display, watching the blue icons that represented friendly forces move slowly toward the red X that marked Alpha Team's last known position. Nightingale Base, this is Bravo Team, Murphy's voice crackled through Maya's headphones as the convoy approached the halfway point. Road conditions normal, no signs of recent activity. Local traffic appears typical for this time of day. Copy, Bravo Team, Maya replied, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Drone coverage shows clear routes ahead. No unusual movement detected in your operational area. The convoy continued northwest, passing through familiar terrain that Maya knew from countless previous missions. The landscape was deceptively peaceful, rolling hills covered in brown grass, scattered villages where children played in dusty yards, agricultural fields where farmers guided irrigation water through ancient channels. Afghanistan's beauty had surprised Maya during her first months in country. Military briefings and news reports had prepared her for violence and chaos, but not for the stunning vistas visible from helicopter flights or the genuine hospitality she had encountered during rare interactions with local civilians. The country's tragedy lay not in its landscape but in the human conflicts that had torn it apart for generations. As Bravo Team approached the ambush site, Maya found herself holding her breath. The drone feed showed the abandoned vehicles clearly now, along with the scattered equipment and motionless figures that had once been Alpha Team. No movement was visible anywhere in the area, no signs that enemy forces remained in the vicinity. Nightingale, this is Bravo Team Leader, Murphy reported, his voice tense with the controlled alertness of a soldier entering a potential combat zone. I have visual contact with Alpha Team's vehicles. Area appears secure, but we're establishing a defensive perimeter before approaching the site. Maya watched the drone feed as Bravo Team's vehicles formed a protective circle around Alpha Team's position. Soldiers emerged from their Humvees with weapons ready, their movements careful and coordinated as they began advancing toward their fallen comrades. Jesus Christ, Murphy's voice came through the radio, filled with grief and anger as he got his first close look at the scene. They didn't have a chance. Looks like they were hit from multiple directions simultaneously. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. These were men she had spoken with regularly, soldiers whose voices had become familiar over months of routine communications. Staff Sergeant Torres had shown her pictures of his newborn daughter during her last visit to his patrol base. Specialist Anderson always requested weather updates because he was planning to propose to his girlfriend when he got home. Private First Class Jackson had asked her to help him practice Spanish because he wanted to surprise his Mexican-American grandmother. Now they were gone, their dreams and plans ended in a few moments of overwhelming violence. Bravo Team, what's your assessment of the attack method? Major Williams asked over the radio, her professional demeanor masking the same emotional impact that Maya was struggling to contain. Multiple positions, Murphy replied grimly. Looks like the ambush was initiated with RPGs to disable the vehicles, followed by concentrated small arms fire from elevated positions on both sides of the road. Alpha Team never had a chance to establish effective defensive positions. Maya closed her eyes, imagining the final moments of Torres and his men. They would have been following standard patrol procedures, maintaining proper spacing between vehicles, scanning for threats along their route. But the attackers had chosen their position perfectly, achieving complete surprise and overwhelming firepower at the critical moment. Any evidence of enemy casualties? Lieutenant Colonel Bradley's voice joined the radio conversation. Negative, sir. Whoever did this policed up their brass and removed their wounded. Professional job all the way. The professional nature of the ambush reinforced Captain Mitchell's earlier assessment. Local insurgent groups typically left behind evidence of their presence, spent shell casings, blood trails, discarded equipment. This attack had been conducted by forces with military discipline and training. Maya continued monitoring as Bravo Team secured the site and began the grim task of documenting the scene for intelligence analysis. Each fallen soldier was photographed, their weapons and equipment catalogued, their positions measured and recorded. The work was methodical and necessary, but Maya could hear the emotional strain in Murphy's voice as he directed his men through procedures that no soldier wanted to perform. Nightingale, this is Bravo Team, Murphy reported after 2 hours at the site. We're ready to begin recovery operations. Request permission to load casualties for transport back to base. Permission granted, Lieutenant Colonel Bradley replied. Bring our boys home. Maya felt a lump forming in her throat as she watched the drone feed show Bravo Team soldiers carefully lifting their fallen comrades. Each body was wrapped in a poncho liner and loaded into a Humvee with the reverence due to fallen warriors. No matter how many times she had witnessed similar scenes over her 3 deployments, the sight never became routine. The return journey to forward operating base Nightingale took place in complete radio silence. Maya monitored the convoy's progress on her tracking display, but no words passed between the vehicles and their base. There was nothing left to say. 12 soldiers had left that morning full of life and purpose. 12 bodies were returning to begin their final journey home. As Bravo Team approached the main gate, Maya could see through her trailer window that the entire base had turned out to pay their respects. Soldiers lined the route from the gate to the medical facility, standing at attention as the convoy passed. Even off-duty personnel had emerged from their quarters to honor the fallen. Maya removed her headphones and stepped outside her trailer for the first time since the crisis had begun. The late afternoon heat hit her like a physical blow, but she barely noticed as she watched the somber procession move slowly through the base. The faces of the soldiers lining the route reflected the same mixture of grief and anger that she felt building inside her chest. Staff Sergeant Torres's body was in the lead vehicle, the same Torres who had checked in with her just 8 hours earlier with a routine position report. Maya thought about the conversation she would never have with him, the stories he would never tell about his daughter, the life that had been cut short by an enemy that struck without warning and disappeared without a trace. As the convoy passed her position, Maya came to attention and saluted, her hand trembling slightly as she held it steady. Around her, hundreds of other soldiers did the same, creating a corridor of silent tribute for the men who had paid the ultimate price. But, beneath her grief, Maya felt something else beginning to build, a cold, focused anger that surprised her with its intensity. These weren't the first soldiers she had lost during her deployment, and, unfortunately, they probably wouldn't be the last. But, something about this attack felt personal, targeted, designed to send a message that American forces could be eliminated with impunity. The enemy that had killed Alpha Team was still out there, probably planning their next attack, confident in their ability to strike and fade away. Maya's training and doctrine said her job was to maintain communications and let the combat soldiers handle the fighting. But, as she watched 12 flag-draped bodies disappear into the medical facility, she found herself questioning everything she had accepted about her role in this war. For the first time since arriving in Afghanistan, Maya Rodriguez began to wonder if staying safely behind the wire was really the best way to serve her fallen comrades. The memorial service for Alpha Team took place 3 days later in the base chapel, a converted shipping container that had been transformed into a place of worship through the addition of wooden pews, stained glass windows, and an altar crafted from local stone. Maya sat in the back row, her dress uniform crisp and her hands folded in her lap as Chaplain Roberts spoke about sacrifice, duty, and the promise of eternal rest for fallen warriors. 12 sets of boots, rifles, and helmets stood in formation at the front of the chapel, each memorial representing a life cut short and a family forever changed. Maya's eyes kept drifting to the display for Staff Sergeant Torres, remembering his proud smile when he had shown her pictures of his 3-month-old daughter. The baby would grow up knowing her father only through photographs and stories told by others. They died doing what they loved, Chaplain Roberts said, his voice echoing in the confined space. Serving their country, protecting their brothers, standing watch in a dangerous world so that others might sleep safely. Maya wanted to believe the chaplain's words, but anger continued to simmer beneath her grief. Torres and his men hadn't died in a heroic battle against overwhelming odds. They had been murdered by an enemy that struck from concealment and disappeared before any help could arrive. There was nothing noble about their deaths, nothing that justified the hole torn in their families' lives. After the service, Maya returned to her communications trailer and threw herself into work with an intensity that worried her colleagues. She monitored radio traffic for 16 hours a day, analyzed communication patterns with obsessive detail, and studied intelligence reports until her eyes burned from fatigue. Sleep came reluctantly and brought dreams of voices calling for help that never arrived. Jennifer Walsh found her there at midnight on the 4th day after the ambush, slumped over her control panel with a half-eaten meal beside her keyboard. Maya's roommate had been increasingly concerned about her friend's behavior since Alpha Team's death, watching Maya retreat into a shell of professional competence that masked deep emotional turmoil. "Maya, you need to get some rest," Jennifer said gently, placing her hand on her friend's shoulder. "You're going to make yourself sick." Maya looked up with bloodshot eyes, her face pale from too many hours under fluorescent lights. "Can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear Torres calling for help. But, in my dreams, I can actually answer him." Jennifer pulled up a chair beside Maya's workstation, her medical training alerting her to signs of trauma and exhaustion that could become dangerous if left untreated. Maya was showing classic symptoms of survivor's guilt, complicated by her role as the communication link that had failed to save the patrol. "It wasn't your fault," Jennifer said firmly. "There was nothing you could have done to prevent what happened to Alpha Team." "I know that," Maya replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Intellectually, I understand that communication failures happen, that soldiers die in war, that I followed proper procedures. But, knowing something and feeling it are different things." Maya turned back to her monitors, where real-time displays showed the positions of every American patrol currently operating outside the wire. Green icons moved slowly across the digital map, each one representing soldiers whose lives might depend on her ability to maintain contact with their base. The responsibility felt heavier now, more personal, weighted with the knowledge of what happened when communications failed at the critical moment. "The intelligence people think they've identified the group that hit Alpha Team," Maya continued, gesturing toward a classified report on her desk. "Foreign fighters, probably Pakistani Taliban with training from Special Operations Forces. They've been operating in this province for the past 6 months, hitting isolated patrols and disappearing back across the border." Jennifer scanned the report, noting details that painted a picture of a sophisticated enemy cell with advanced training and equipment. Unlike local insurgent groups that relied on improvised tactics and local support, these fighters used military-grade weapons, professional planning, and operational security that made them extremely difficult to track. "So what's the plan?" Jennifer asked. How do we find them? Maya's expression hardened in a way that Jennifer had never seen before. Lieutenant Colonel Bradley is organizing a task force to hunt them down. 3 full companies, supported by air assets and intelligence resources. They're calling it Operation Iron Vengeance. The name was typical military terminology, designed to sound decisive and powerful. But Jennifer could hear something else in Maya's voice, an undertone of frustration that suggested her friend wasn't satisfied with conventional military responses to Alpha Team's deaths. That's good, Jennifer said carefully. Professional soldiers with proper support should be able to track down these foreign fighters. Should be, Maya repeated bitterly. Just like Alpha Team should have been able to call for help when they were attacked. Just like our intelligence should have warned us about the threat. Just like a lot of things that didn't happen the way they were supposed to. Jennifer recognized the dangerous spiral of thinking that Maya was entering. She had seen similar reactions in other soldiers who had lost friends in combat, a growing cynicism about official procedures, combined with an obsessive desire to personally ensure that justice was served. Left unchecked, these feelings could lead to reckless behavior and poor decision-making. Maya, I think you should talk to someone about this, Jennifer suggested. The chaplain, or maybe one of the counselors. You're carrying too much guilt about something that wasn't your responsibility. Maya shook her head firmly. I don't need counseling. I need those bastards who killed Alpha Team to pay for what they did. And I need to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. The intensity in Maya's voice alarmed Jennifer. She had known her roommate for 6 months and had never heard her express such raw anger or personal investment in combat operations. Maya had always been the calm, professional technician who stayed focused on her equipment while others handled the emotional aspects of warfare. What exactly are you thinking about doing? Jennifer asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. Maya turned back to her monitors, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she accessed classified databases that contained detailed information.